All right, welcome to our first podcast. I'm Coach D. Blaze, and I'm here with Logan. So we're just going to go over some off-season training kind of principles and what you should be looking to kind of accomplish as a hockey player in the off-season. So we'll share some kind of things we do here at the gym, and hopefully give you guys some feedback and some ideas of what you should be or could be incorporating, whether it's your home gym or your gym, like a big box gym type thing. So, Logan, thanks for coming here.
For sure. I guess, of course, you could always come train with Dave in the off-season programs. That's probably option A if you can do that one, right?
Yeah, so we have programs for all ages here, and depending on the age, we have different focuses and principles. But this time of year, May to the end of August, is where we're really ramped up with all our athletes being home, whether that's our NHL guys or our AAA local guys. So we have programs for everybody, and basically that's kind of what I want to kind of let people know is what we do here and kind of things that you could do at home, or if you want to come in, you can also reach out to us and inquire about some programs.
Yeah, so I guess the first question, we're at that time of season where everyone is sort of finished hockey. You're maybe not on the ice as much, maybe you're doing a little 3-on-3. Which I think probably makes the opportune time now for building muscle and getting stronger for next year. So, when you're playing hockey, obviously I can imagine you don't want to be like burning your legs out 3 times a week because you got to be able to skate, right? You got to be able to go and play hockey and perform. So is this the best time of year to build muscle? Like if you're looking to seriously get stronger for the next season, is now the time to do that?
Yeah, now's the time where you really want to, step away from the ice a little bit and start taking care of your training. So this is like the crucial time where you want to prioritize kind of where you're at in the season. And with the off season, it's really, it's tough. It's the FOMO, the fear of missing out. So there's all these spring tournaments and all this stuff. And, it's complicated with different ages. Certain kids should be doing stuff. But regardless, if you're really thinking of long-term development as an athlete, your off season should be where you're working to build not just your strength, but your speed, build durability in your body as well. So a lot of people think like the off season is just go hard, train hard, and push your body. But you also want to, make sure you're working on your stretching, your mobility, your speed work, your coordination too. So the off season is it's really important. I don't feel enough people really set up an off season. So they don't plan it. It's like they always on the ice. Things have changed with all sports, but a lot of people haven't put that priority in the off ice.
Right, and I guess what happens for most people is, the hockey season comes around, you do your tryouts, you start the season, it's go, go, go. Maybe you're doing some training off ice, maybe you're doing power skating, all these different things, and the season comes to a close, and you just kind of jump into some off season, like maybe some 3-on-3, some tournaments, some things like that, right? Maybe some people are just kind of kick back and play a different sport, right? You probably have some lacrosse players or some soccer players that do that in the off season, right?
Yeah.
But what we're saying is sort of, let's take some time to plan what our off season is going to look like, maybe set some goals, because that's really the way that you're going to improve. And if we look at the NHL players, it's such a crucial time for their development is the off season, right? So what does a plan look like for you, in your opinion? What's like a solid off season plan that a hockey player should be doing?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Is really planning. Like that's the big thing where I feel they don't plan. It's like they add all these things to their list and they forget to like actually plan out their training. So what I mean by planning is like, setting a goal of how many times a week you want to be training. Okay. And then you want consistency is the biggest thing. So going once a week ain't really going to cut it. So if you set up a plan of like training 2 to 4 times a week over the course of the next like 4 months and like setting specific days, because if you just try and piece it together, people are so busy. Like I encourage playing other sports and doing other activities and stuff like that. It's fine, but that's still not your off ice training, right? You're really working on your strength and your speed. You're still working on like sports skills. So just say lacrosse, for example. You're running and stuff like that. You're working on your footwork, but you're not really building foot speed and pure speed. So you want to make sure you have a plan of like, when are you going to the gym? What are you doing in the gym too? It's not just show up and go, I'm going to do legs today. I'm just going to do upper body. It's like, what movements are we training? what training variables do we want to do? Do we want to build power, speed, or strength? So those are all things that you want to incorporate into a plan to really make some improvements.
Okay, and it sounds like specialization is important. It sounds like knowing maybe your strengths or your weaknesses so that you have a focused goal of, like you said, like there's these different areas. And I imagine working with you, that would be something that people could get a better idea of maybe what their strengths and weaknesses are, right?
Yeah.
Because it is hard if you're working out there just on your own at home and just kind of signing up for different tournaments or sports or whatever. Maybe you don't have a great insight of what exactly it is you should be working on. Probably a great way to do that is come in for a session with you. Like, see, you could probably guide some of your athletes of what should they be working on, maybe based on their position. Would that be correct? Like, it probably changes depending what.
So sticking with athletes, it's your specialization in what are we going to focus and specialize in for your off-ice training is important. So, for example, when athletes come in, we have a methodology, a format that we kind of follow. Now, based on whether it's not necessarily position, but is the athlete already strong? Are they already fast? Right? Do they have great conditioning, poor mobility? So when you come in, this is where it gets complicated, where when you go to see a professional, that's what they should be evaluating. It's I train in groups, but it's getting to understand the athlete and what their strengths are. We're still gonna work on that stuff,
right,
but maybe we need to do a little more strength versus their power. Okay. Or maybe we gotta hit the conditioning a lot sooner or add an extra conditioning day. So you need to find out what you need to work on. And a lot of people are similar. They always wanna get faster and stronger. That's the biggest one. And we all touch on that. And everyone's gonna have, their skill set, but you wanna be definitely attacking your weaknesses. So it's kind of finding a plan that works for you. And that's what we do here is like I said, might have an athlete do a few less sets in strength and a few more sprints, or they might do more power. This guy might do more single leg strength and stuff like that. So that's the fun part of this job is, trying to making it a personalized program for individuals in a good group setting.
Yeah, for sure. And it sounds like it really is that sort of overall, holistic approach, but you just kind of have little areas that each athlete can work on. Now, what age should an athlete be starting to do this type of work, in your opinion? What would be the best age to be I'm going to start doing off-season training?
Yeah, so with that question, it's maturation's a big one,
okay,
right? So you have your chronological age, so you can be an 8-year-old, but you're more motivated or focused. That can change the variable. So between the ages of 8 and 12,
okay,
those are great development years. So if you're thinking between 8 and 12, is the brain is growing at such a high rate. Anything you really expose a young kid to or a young athlete to, they're gonna be able to start building these new pathways and kind of push their potential, okay, whatever that means. Some people have a base athletic ability, some might be a little lower, but it doesn't mean we can't train it.
Right.
That's the biggest thing. So between those years, a lot of stuff we're doing is teaching coordination, teaching running or jumping mechanics. It's very athletic skills, so we can teach that stuff. So when you're in a sport, it's so fast-paced that it's organized chaos, right?
Yes.
Where when you're in the gym setting, this is where you can really slow things down, and really break down kind of how the athletes position their body and so forth. So we can really teach because it's a controlled environment in here.
Yeah.
So between the ages of 8 and 12, we're basically working on body awareness through coordination drills, footwork drills, jumping and landing, and watching how they're doing it. Mm-hmm. And then between the age of 13 to 16, that's when we're getting more into the strength stuff. So weight training is a big misconception of people well, I'm younger, I shouldn't be lifting weights because it's going to damage my body. The damage comes if you're obviously overloading too much and poor movement skills, right? So we got to remember, 13 to 16, you're not a small adult, right? You're still a kid, right? So we can't train young athletes the same as we would an adult because they're smaller. They're not as developed. But we can introduce strength training, and it's not always weight. So working with athletes, I'm more concerned about how they're moving.
Okay.
and then loading that movement, whether that's through, jumping, because you're putting more stress on the body, or using weights, bands, medicine balls, so we're loading the body a little more.
Yeah, and I think that can be a scary thing maybe for some parents, especially as looking at their young athlete, right, and their kids, and they're worried about them getting injured for sure. And you think about going to the gym and building muscle, and you see these stereotypes of bodybuilders lifting these crazy weights and getting all big and everything. And you definitely want to be strong, because I know if you aren't strong in the right areas, or if you just focus on hockey, there's actually probably a much higher risk of injury, is there not, than if you were actually working on your strength training off ice?
Yeah, so for sure, that's kind of the big thing is, in the weight room or the training room, that's where you're building. We're going to minimize the risk of injuries, like non-contact injuries, right? Accidents happen and so forth, but you want to build that durable body. So, if you do fall awkwardly, or you got a big tournament weekend and you're stressing that groin by like skating a ton and playing a lot of minutes, that's what the off season does. It helps build that durability. So that's a big one. It's like, that's the biggest thing for me is I'm looking to add years to like my athletes' career. My pros, it's like I don't want to take years off by pushing them too hard. No. I want to build them up so they can stay on the ice longer. So it's durability is what strength training is kind of all about.
Yeah, so anyone with that stigma that the gym, could be potentially damaging or injuring to your athlete, it's quite the opposite. I think it really conditions them and helps, like you said, create durability on and off the ice. And I know one of the biggest stats for concussions actually that help it is the strength of your upper body and neck, et cetera, because you're able to, when you get that hit or that fall that, of course, is unexpected or you don't want to happen, that those muscles are able to combat that and actually like help protect your body, right? Like your muscles are there to protect your bone structure and whatnot. So the more muscle you have, the safer that you would obviously be generally most of the time, I imagine, right?
Yeah. So no, that's good. So just to circle back a little bit, kind of going off what, building that strength, some people call it muscle mass, because the history of training is bodybuilding and strongman stuff. So it's lifting heavy weights. But so going back to our question earlier about how old should you be to come in and train, and parents being afraid to lift weights or do strength training. If you think about it, I get this one a lot. I don't want my kid doing any strength training or any weights. Just a misconception. But if you look at it this way, well, you're okay with getting me to make your athlete run or jump, where if you think when you jump and land, that's putting way more force on your body versus taking, doesn't matter your age really, taking like a 12-year-old, 14 or 16-year-old with a 5-pound weight or a 20-pound weight, whatever they can really handle with controlled movement. It's like that's a lot less pounding and load on the muscle tissue versus like jumping or sprinting, right? So that's kind of always what I go back at the parents it's like, well, when you jump and land, that force is actually like way more on your body, depending how high they're jumping, if we're dropping off a box. So that's a form of strength training still, right? So we're overloading the body through gravity or extra force. So that's where, teaching the athlete competent movement skills is like, it's okay if they can handle it, we can add a little more load here and there.
Yeah, and I know another thing that you do so well is, things progress as the athlete ages, right? So when they start, they're probably doing a little bit more just like of their body weight exercises, things like that, right? And as they develop, what age are you generally looking at to sort of transition them into maybe the weightlifting where, as your athlete gets older, maybe their hormones start changing, they have to use additional weight, right, to start to build that muscle effectively?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, typically between the ages of 16 and 19, that's kind of that other level. So I talked a little bit, like 8 to 12 is like one category, 13 to 16 is kind of a different category. And then, 16 to 18, 19 is a separate category. So that's when we're going to get a little more advanced in our movement skills. Once again, they're not doing tons of crazy weight like you would in a typical bodybuilding scenario or powerlifting scennario. Once again, we got to recognize those are sports, right? So they require different training modalities than an athlete or a hockey player specifically. So when we get between 16 and 18, they're doing similar things that a younger kid might do, just they're going to have a little more load because they've learned the patterns, right?
Right.
And that again, that goes back to like, if I have an athlete coming in, once a week during the season, then 2 to 3 times a week in the off season, and they started when they're 10 or 12 or 13, and they're with me for 3 or 4 years. Well, just because this 14-year-old comes in, is brand new, doesn't mean, well, they're older, so they get to do these advanced skills. Once again, the consistency is the biggest thing. You cannot speed up your development.
Okay.
Right? So coming in, we went like once a week for like 3 months and, really no improvement. And then I don't see them for, 6 months, or you step away from a training program and go to a different one, you're not going to see the results.
No.
It's like consistency, right? You do the best you can because, people are busy. Pro athletes are busy. Young athletes are really busy with school and all this stuff. So consistency is the big one. And once again, it doesn't matter your age. It's more like your commitment level and your planning of your training schedule. So you can make bigger progress if you're spending more time in honing your craft and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's such valuable years of your life. We talked about the growth spurts and the hormone changes as like a young athlete going into their teen years and whatnot as some key moments where they'll be able to develop that muscle and have that for the rest of their lives, right?
Yeah.
Which is a really cool thing. So I think the message to sort of bring things home here would be just like, if you're interested in this kind of thing, if you got you're a young athlete or you have a young athlete at home that's interested in this kind of thing, come on out, check out the program, and see where it takes them. Like, you'll be able to guide them in the right direction and give them that advice, right?
Yeah, for sure. So we're always here to help and kind of provide insight into training because it is very important now to do it. And there is a proper way to do it, but at the end of the day, it's finding consistency with whatever works with your schedule. And, budget's another big one. It's like things are expensive, and now, we want to provide for our kids the best opportunity, and they have to train nowadays. It's just, kids are like whatever sport, it's so competitive now. But this is where it's teaching through pushing young kids how to push themselves and kind of find their potential. Especially with young boys, being active is a huge part of their development. So this is just like adding to their sports. It's another practice training day, but it's more of a controlled environment. So you can actually grow and develop your skills. Versus, if you're just always playing sports, which is fine if that's what you want, but if you want to develop over the long term and take your athletic ability to another level, training is very important. And that's why there's facilities like us around, and we'd love to help out.
All right. Thanks, Dave.
Awesome.